Matthew chapter 2, verses 9 through 11. Very common story to us, but I did want us to take a look at it this morning as we remember Christmas. When they had heard the king, they departed. Now remember, the three wise men had come into town. Of course, where would you expect the king to be born except in a palace? So they approached the palace, and Herod had a marvelous, marvelous palace. It was really the talk of the town in that part of the world. And so Herod was there, and the kings, of course, the men from the earth, rather the men from the east, as they traveled this direction, knowing that they could see the star, and they knew, of course, if he's the king of the Jews, that he is going to be born in Jerusalem. So they go to Jerusalem, and if he's a king, then he must be in the palace. And so they go to Herod to greet him on the success of having his successor. Problem with Herod, though, is Herod wasn't a Jew. Herod was not the rightful king. And this is how come we're told that all of a sudden that the king, Herod, was troubled by this saying. Because Herod was actually a descendant of Esau and not a descendant of Jacob. He was not an Israel at all. He was an Edomite. And so he was appointed king and given that title because him and Caesar had a very close relationship. And so Caesar appointed him to the angerment of a lot of the Jews. It was not a comfortable way. So the way Herod bought his way into the Jewish homes and the way he got the Jews to accept him is he started a 46-year building program to build them a beautiful temple. They hadn't had a temple that was this regal in years and years. And so he spent 46 years. That's why when you meet Jesus later and he says to them as he begins his ministry, tear down this temple and in 3 days I'll build it up again. And they said, it's been 46 years we've been building this temple. And you're going to rebuild it in just 3 days? Herod, of course, to ingratiate himself to the people because he was not their rightful king, built them a temple. Suddenly now word comes to him. And the Jews is not an easy place to rule over. In fact, when you got in trouble in Rome, they would send you or ostracize you to Israel. It was the worst place as far as the Jews just didn't like having anybody rule over them. They had a promise from God that they would be freed and that they would be ruled over by him. And so when anybody came in and wanted to rule, they had trouble when the Greeks came in, when the Persians came in. In fact, remember, they had so much trouble that the Persian king just took them completely out of their land and took them to Babylon where he could keep control over them. They were hard people to rule. And so during the Roman Empire, during these days, they were difficult to rule over. And so Herod all of a sudden gets word that there was a rightful king who was born, the king of the Jews. And these men say, listen, we saw it in the stars. There is a prophecy. There is Old Testament promises. There are prophecies written in the stars about this man. These men could see it. So here they come from the east. Now remember, these men from the east would be familiar with the Jewish stories because, remember I told you just a moment ago that Israel was taken captive into Babylon. And while they were in Babylon, the Persians took over and they were taken captive, or I should say permitted to live in Persia as well as in Babylon. And while they were ruled there, they were the leaders. Daniel, remember, was the chief wise man to both of these kings, both the Babylonian king and to the Persian king. So the Jews were well known in the court. Remember when they began to come back, Zerubbabel would go to the Persian king to get permission to come back and reestablish the kingdom. And so Daniel and many others would have great influence. The Jews had great influence both in Babylon and in Persia. So we're not surprised. And remember, many of the Jews, when they were given an opportunity to go home, stayed. Many of them stayed in Babylon. Many of them stayed in Persia and never went back to their home in Jerusalem. So we're not surprised in that these wise men from the east were familiar with the story because they had grown up hearing these things. Maybe that these were even men of Jewish descent. or some sort of Jewish ancestry in them. And so they are looking, they heard, they came to Jerusalem, they come to the palace, and they say to the king, "Where is he who is born the King of the Jews?" Whoa. Herod's greatly troubled. And the whole city is, because Herod's got a nasty temper. You and I are going to see that. If you read the end of the chapter, you find out just how nasty his temper is when he goes out and kills all the children that are 2 years and younger. We know that he's a wicked man. And Herod was known for being a wicked man. He got to power by killing his own brothers and sisters. When he came to power, when his daddy died and he became the king, he killed off everybody that was related to him so that nobody could claim his crown. So he's not a nice guy. And so when these three wise men come and say, "Where is he that is born the King of the Jews?" No wonder he's upset. He killed everybody who could have had a claim to it. And he says he is born. Remember, they talk and he finds out he's not born here in Bethlehem and here in Jerusalem. He's born 2 miles away over there in Bethlehem. 6 miles actually. So they go down the road, and as they leave, and when they heard the king, they departed. And lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them until it came and stood over where the child was. And seeing the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And coming into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother. And they fell down and they worshipped him. And opening their treasures, they presented him gifts. They presented rather gifts to him: gold and frankincense and myrrh. Let me tap that low disk space sign again. I don't know why it keeps popping up. Let's take a look at these three gifts that they've got. And the first of these gifts then that we're going to see is going to be gold. I wasn't having a problem before, now I'm letting my hand. If they want to change even me standing here. Now watch, when it changes, we're going to go through 6 of them. Okay, let's just go this way then. Okay, the first one is going to be that of gold. As you can see, they brought unto him gold. Gold now is what the king's crown would be made of. So this gold speaks of the crowning of Jesus Christ. It was prophesied and promised that he would be prophet and priest and king. And so Jesus Christ, as was promised, where is he that is born King of the Jews? This gold would represent exactly that, his kingly estate. Jesus Christ, when he came, offered to the people of Israel the opportunity to allow him to sit on the throne. In biblical terms, we refer to it as being proffered. He proffered them the kingdom. That is, he made an offer knowing they would refuse it. He offered to be their king, knowing that they would not accept him. The royal, particularly, the priests, because there was too much money. The high priests were vastly wealthy people, and they made their money off the religion. And of course, the king was very rich as well, making his money off the ability to tax people. So between the high priest who could charge you a temple tax and the king who could charge you a tax for everything else, these two groups were very, very wealthy and very, very well set in their ways. They often would group together. You would hear sometimes when Jesus would argue with the Pharisees or with the Sadducees, and sometimes when you read, you'll see, and the Herodians. The Herodians were a political group, that religious group of Jews that were backing Herod. And so these groups would come together against the Lord himself. Who should have known better than the high priest that Jesus Christ was born in Bethlehem? But you never hear him going there. You never find out about any of the priests, any of the Levites, any of the Pharisees, any of the Sadducees, any of the Herodians, they never left Jerusalem and traveled down to Bethlehem to see this baby who the whole city knew. The whole city knew. How come wise men in the east knew, but the high priest in the temple in the very city, the very religion which was designed to serve Jesus, didn't know he was coming? This man knew. He knew he was the rightful king. He brought him gold to say, I know you are the king of the Jews. I know you are the king. Not only the king of the Jews, but the king of the whole earth. I know you are the creator God. How come his own religious people, it'd be like you and I. If the second coming occurred, the trumpet blasts, and you and I should say, gee, what is that noise? We see the skies parting, Jesus standing and saying, come on home. And we say, why would we want to do that? It would be insane in our mind that people would not accept or receive, particularly their whole life was designed on a religion that was waiting for Jesus to come. They had sacrificed lamb after lamb after lamb after lamb after lamb, knowing that one day God himself would provide the lamb. And yet when God provides the lamb, they don't show up. When the king is born, who could deliver them back to God, they don't go. Oh, well, okay, it is a journey of about 6 miles. They could have rested in the morning and gone the next day. Listen, it took these wise men 2 years to journey to where he was. And yet they spent that journey. They took that time, they got themselves ready, and they came carrying their gift, saying, I know. Listen, if I knew where God was, I would go there. And yet many people never do. I know where God is. He's always in my prayer closet. And yet I would never go there. I would not spend my time. I would not bow my head. I would not close my eyes. I would not find myself close to him. What would keep me from doing that? Except for unbelief. What would keep me from doing that except for I want to be my own deity. That gold should be for me. Why should I give it to him as a crown when I could make myself a crown? This man traveled, recognizing what was going on, and came all that way because he knew that God was in Bethlehem that night. And he wanted to lay eyes on him. But none of his own followers did. All we know is some shepherds came. No royalty, except for these three. Wise men from the east. And the first one says, I've got gold because I believe that we should crown him. That is our belief. We believe that Jesus Christ should be the king of our own life. If he is not the rightful king of Israel, if they would not accept him, if this nation of ours, the United States of America, will not accept Jesus Christ as its king, I will. And you will. And so you and I would lay the gift of our gold. Last night we had the little manger scene up here. We brought our gold, represented by dollar bills today, and we placed our gold in that just as that man did. Because we believe that he should be the king of our life. But the next one, and frankincense. Frankincense is an important one. Like you sang in the song, did you see it? Praising, praying, praising, worshiping. That's what frankincense. Remember, in heaven, there is that altar of prayer. It's called the altar of incense. They've got it in heaven. When we read the book of Revelation, we saw it there, that our prayers were taken and they were placed upon the altar of incense, and then God would take that incense and he would pour it over our prayers, and as the smell of that incense ascended toward his throne, he would answer the prayers that were on that table. In the story of the birth of John the Baptist, his daddy was a Levite. And it was his daddy's job, Zechariah, to offer incense upon the altar. And so he took that incense, he went into the altar where the fire was on that table. And while he is standing there with that incense, he says to the Lord, Lord, my wife and I don't have a child. And as he speaks the word, he pours the incense out over the... And as the smoke ascends, suddenly there is in the room with him an angel who says, your prayer is heard. The altar of incense, the table of incense, the fire would be burning. The incense would be poured. The prayer was made. That's what incense is a picture of. And so in this case, what was this wise man understanding? He understood that Jesus Christ is the answer to our prayers. Not only are our answers in him, but he himself is the very answer to every prayer of every heart. The greatest need we have is to find our way home back to God. And Jesus Christ is the answer to that prayer. Peace on earth, goodwill toward men was the promise of the angel last night. All of that promise is found in Jesus Christ. He is the frankincense. He is the answer to prayer and the answerer of prayer. When you and I pray, the blood of Jesus Christ, which was shed for us, is seen by the Father, and the Father answers our prayers because he loves the Son. But the Son reminded us he doesn't only answer the prayers because he loves me. He answers your prayers because he loves you. Why? Well, remember last night, the promise that was made, that there would be glory to God in the highest, peace on earth toward men of good will. God no longer against us because we came in a promissory way. We made an agreement with God that if he would no longer be against us, we would be for him. We would accept him. We would believe. We would trust in him. We made that promise. We became men of good will, of good determination, of good decision making when we decided to follow Jesus Christ. And so the promise to us then was peace would be ours. Frankincense, again, through Jesus Christ, the answerer of prayer. Incense is always in the Bible a picture of prayer. And so as this wise man then brings to Jesus, who is the answerer of all prayers, he brings him in a picture, a box of prayers. And he takes these prayers and he hands them to the Lord, knowing that Jesus Christ would hear and answer all of them. If I hear you, then you have the petition you have asked for. If I hear you. And so that little baby laying there, here it is, this man who stands before and believing that he is not only the answer but the answerer of prayer, hands to him this frankincense. Gold, because he should be worshipped. Frankincense, because it is his right as a king to answer. Remember when Solomon was on the throne and people would come before him? There's the story of the woman. Two women came. One's child was dead, the other child was alive. Both women were fighting over whose child it was. And so they came to Solomon to get the answer. And Solomon said, cut the baby in half and give them each a half. And of course, one woman said, yes, let's do that. And the other one said, no, let her have it. And Solomon knew immediately that only the mother would love that much. And so he said, no, give the child to this one instead. See, that wisdom of Solomon, that ability to answer the question, that ability to answer our request, to give us what we want, that's Jesus. And this wise man was wise enough to know it and symbolize that wisdom with frankincense. Here, answer my prayers. How wise is that we would understand that we could say to Jesus here, answer my prayers. And finally, we have myrrh. As we sang in the song, it is a picture of gathering gloom, of sorrowing and dying. This man's wisdom allowed him to know that that baby was born to die. That baby, so sweet and so innocent. What was it that the angel said to him, to Mary? Or rather, I should say, I guess it was Anna that said to her when she went to the temple when Jesus was 8 days old. He was given for the rise and fall, and a knife would pierce, or a sword would pierce your heart also. She would know the sadness of losing her son. No mother looks forward to that day. We all expect that our children, it is my full expectation that all my children should watch me go. I don't think I could handle watching them go first. It's not right. It's supposed to be that parents lead the way. Parents go first. That's just the way we understand it. And yet, it was understood by this man, as it was understood by Simeon and Anna, that this one would go first before his mother. And that there would be a knife plunged through her heart, just as there was a spear pierced through the side of Jesus Christ and pierced his heart. Her heart too would be pierced on that very same day, at that very same occasion. Can you imagine being the mother and watching them take and beat your child the way they did? And nothing you can do. You can't stop it. The might of the Roman army is there. To stand by and watch them nail your son to a cross. To watch the crowd as they spit upon him, knowing who he was. Knowing that he came for this purpose, but how hard that nobody was accepting him. Nobody was believing him. One thing as parents we want is we want people to admire our children as much as we do. When our children go up on a stage and they perform in school, we want the crowd to applaud when we do. We don't want people to say, wow, what a lousy kid. I hope he doesn't come back next year. You know, we want everybody to be excited. When my Jenna Mayer stands here and sings next to Grandpa, I want everybody to enjoy the fact that she stand up here and sing. You might not like my singing, but I want you to enjoy hers. When my little baby girls come run up here and Uncle Mikey has to hold them both because she's not going to leave until we sing, woe be to God. I want you to enjoy that as much as I do. See, that's just how parents and grandparents, that's how we're made. And no wonder it would be so hard for Mary to know. When this wise man came in, although she had been told that he was set for the rising and falling of many in Israel, although she knew he was coming to be the Redeemer, why did this man on that particular night have to burden her heart again by presenting myrrh? This is one of the things, 100 pounds of this stuff would be used at his burial. Joseph of Arimathea, they would wrap his body and it would be wrapped in myrrh. Why on this day did somebody have to kneel down and present to her child a reminder of his death while she's celebrating his life? We all know what's going to happen. Everybody dies eventually, but you don't have to sit there and remind that parent while they're there. I remember when Naya was born, she had a difficult birth. And there was a chance of losing her. We did not want on that day we were celebrating her birth to also become the day that we had to acknowledge her death. That bit of news does not go together. The joy of birth does not go with the sadness of dying. Yet here, this wise man, who understood that this child was born to die. And so he presents to the mother myrrh. Something that's used at funerals. Sort of strange. God in his providence so also knew that Herod would be coming for the child, and all of these are very costly. That myrrh is very expensive. That incense, very expensive. Gold, of course, you understood was expensive. But all of these are very expensive gifts and would be used by the family to provide for the child while they have to run away to Egypt. Wow. Did this come in handy or what? Well, we're on the lam for a couple of years hiding out from Herod, and Dad can't work. God provided for Jesus and for Mary and for Joseph. These three gifts to provide for three people. But as you and I are reminding ourselves of this great joy of Christmas, there is always with us the sadness that he was born to die for us. But what great joy that is. As we sang in that song, it isn't over at his death, because this is where we knew for sure. After they nailed him to the cross, after they left him dead for 3 days, we know that he proved that all of this was true. That he was to be crowned again. Again, speaking of a second time, sure, because he died the first time and then rose from the dead and lived the second time, proclaiming to you and to me who were born once that we also would be born again. In fact, we'll probably be born a third time, because when we get into heaven, we'll have a new beginning, a new body, a new spirit, a whole new being will be ours when we walk into the very presence of God. And so all of these gifts, speaking about these things, these Christmas gifts that were given to him, who would give us the greatest gift of all, eternal life.